Well, the meat processing plants have been hit hard by the coronavirus. So Derrell, talk a little bit about like what we're seeing this week in regards to this, some of the slaughterhouses across the nation.
Both beef and pork processing facilities and poultry to some extent as well have been hit really hard the last 2 to 3 weeks with kind of a rolling wave of worker impacts from coronavirus, of course. And so we're seeing plants that are either totally shut down or so much worker absenteeism that capacity is reduced, or they're taking obviously a lot of steps in those plants to try to space out workers and stagger shifts and those kind of things. All of those lead to significant reduction in the ability to process animals and maintain our meat supplies.
So speaking of meat supplies, how are the consumers being affected by this?
Well, we are actually probably going to see some legitimate shortages, if you will, at least temporarily, in the meat industry, both beef and pork in particular. A month ago we had some cases where there wasn't enough product in the grocery store, but that was just a logistical issue. It was a bottleneck. We had plenty of product. This time we actually have a reduction in product. So, for example, in the beef industry in the last 3 weeks, we have produced about 300 million pounds less beef than we did at the same time last year.
We spoke to Paul Beck a couple weeks ago about some of the impacts that it was having on cattle producers then, and producers not able to sell some of the cattle that they had and how to keep them longer. What are the impacts now that coronavirus is having on them?
It's the same thing, but much more exaggerated. So now we're, with the reductions in slaughter that we're seeing, fed cattle are backing up every day. It's very expensive to maintain those animals once they're ready. But that's what we're having to do. And then, of course, that just sets off a chain reaction back up the system for the rest of the cattle in the feedlot that are coming along. And then feedlots, if they're not moving cattle out of the feedlots, they're not placing many cattle because they don't have any pen space. So that impacts the feeder cattle markets. And so on down all the way back up the chain, we're seeing those ripple effects in the industry.
So I know it's really hard to predict, but do you know how long we're going to be in this situation?
Well, we don't know, obviously, but if we can, go through the next couple of weeks, maybe we see the worst of these impacts. It may take a couple weeks after that before we would get all the plants back up line. One of the questions we have longer term, though, is that with the changes we're having to make to make these plants safer for workers and so on, we at least for the foreseeable future, we probably do not get all that capacity back. So the bottom line is it may take several months for beef and pork industries to catch back up, if you will, on the slaughter, especially on the beef side. And so we could be looking at impacts much of the rest of the year.
All right, thanks, Derrell. Dr. Derrell Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.